Hello and welcome, delegates. My name is Laetitia and I'm the Undersecretary General of the General Assembly for GLOMUN 2020. If you are a delegate registered in any of the GA committees or in the committee WHO, this video is for you. In this video, I will be going over a typical GA committee session along with parliamentary procedure, which is the code of conduct that every delegate must follow. Parley-Pro, as we call it, contains many terms that will become like a model UN language, so make sure to watch the entire video. To begin, you will enter the conference room and meet the chair, or the head of committee. He, she, or they will then take roll call. When your country's name is called, please make sure to raise your placard and say either present or present and voting. The difference between these two is that once you say present and voting, you must vote on the resolution papers that are presented later in the committee session. If you choose to simply say present, you have the choice to abstain or remain neutral. Next, a delegate will make a motion to open debate, which simply means to begin. A motion is a request to the chair that the committee will vote on, and most motions need a 2/3 majority to pass. Motions help committee and debate move forward. A delegate will then motion to open a speakers list, where you can give a short speech encompassing your country's stance and policies. This is when you find common ground with other delegates and begin to communicate your ideas. If the committee passes the motion to open the speakers list, the delegate who proposed the motion may speak first. The chair will ask other delegates to raise their placards if they wish to speak. This will continue until a delegate motions to move into a moderated or an unmoderated caucus, typically a moderated caucus towards the beginning of committee. A moderated caucus, or a mod, is used to discuss specific subtopics within the broader topic at hand. You can motion for a moderated caucus by stating the length of the mod, the speaking time for the individual, and the subtopic that you would like to discuss. For example, for a committee debating sustainable economic development, you can motion for a 10-minute moderated caucus with a 1-minute speaking time on the topic of the affordability of clean energy. A chair will accept multiple motions, and the committee will then vote on these different motions. The committee votes on the motions from most disruptive to least disruptive, meaning that the motions which require the most number of speakers are voted on first. If two motions have the same length and the same number of speakers, then you will vote based on the motion that was submitted first. The first motion to pass is in order, and like any other moderated caucus, the delegate who proposed the motion will have the choice to speak first. If not, they will be speaking last, and the chair will choose the appropriate number of delegates to speak. After a few moderated debates, the chair will typically look favorably upon an unmoderated caucus. This is exactly what it sounds like, an unmoderated debate. There is no limit on individual speaking time, nor is the chair calling on delegates to speak. Instead, you are free to move around and discuss ideas with other delegates and form blocks to write a resolution paper together. You can motion for an unmod by stating the length of the unmod and the purpose. For example, you can motion for an unmoderated caucus of 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing the contents of the last few mods. Mods and unmods will take up most of the committee sessions. Throughout committee sessions, you should be writing a working paper with your block or a group of fellow delegates who share similar ideas to you. The chair will suggest deadline times throughout committee for the working papers, and working papers must be finalized and turned in by that time. If you are part of a block, you can either be a sponsor or a signatory. Sponsors are people who have generally written a good chunk of the working paper and fully support the contents of it, while signatories simply want to see the ideas discussed. You can be a sponsor of one paper and signatories of multiple others. The chair will state a maximum number of sponsors allowed for a working paper and a minimum number of signatories for the working paper to be submitted. Once the deadline time arrives, all working papers should be submitted and ready to be presented. You must motion to present working papers in a specific order. Different orders suggested count as different motions. Once a motion to present working papers passes, delegates from each working paper block must choose people to go up and present their paper. These people are typically sponsors as they know the content best. The same people, or different people depending on the chair's preference, will be engaging in a Q&A or an authors panel following the presentation. Once the Q&A is over, other blocks will repeat by presenting and conducting a Q&A until all of the working papers have been discussed. Following the presentation, you can motion for moderated caucuses to discuss all working papers. Common moderated caucus topics include differences in each working paper, weaknesses in each paper, or simply why their working paper is superior to others. You can also make changes to each other's working papers. You can motion for an unmoderated caucus to discuss amendments, which are suggestions that delegates make to change each other's working papers. They can be as trivial as spelling errors or as drastic as eliminating half of the paper. You can write the amendments and propose it to all of the sponsors of the working paper it concerns. And if all the sponsors agree to this change, the amendment is brought to the chair and the chair announces it as friendly. There is no need to vote. On the other hand, if even one of the sponsors disagrees to this change, the amendment is called as unfriendly and brought to the chair as well. Once a sufficient number of amendments are collected by the chair, a delegate will want to motion to present all of the amendments. Unfriendly amendments are voted on by the entire committee, whereas friendly amendments are celebrated and put into place. Regardless of whether or not the committee chooses to go into a mod or an unmod following presentations, debate and amendments are necessary components of committee sessions. After working papers are complete, the chair will announce the maximum number of draft resolutions they are willing to accept, which is always lower than the number of working papers presented. This means that blocks will have to merge papers and typically cut sponsors. Draft resolutions are essentially merged working papers or revised working papers. You should motion for unmods to discuss merging with other blocks and negotiating sponsors. You can also merge papers by cutting out sections from each block's working paper and creating one final draft resolution. Like the working papers, chairs set a time deadline and all draft resolutions should be submitted by then. After draft resolutions are submitted, the committee usually moves into moderated caucuses to announce the merger and discuss the new components of each paper. They will advocate for their paper during the mods until the committee moves into voting procedure. To do so, you must motion to move into voting procedure, voting on the draft resolutions in a specific order. Once in voting procedure, no delegate may enter or leave the room. The chair will move through each draft resolution, asking the delegates to vote for either yes, no, or abstain. This is where your present or present and voting comes in. If you said present and voting, you may not abstain. Multiple resolutions can pass, or all of them can fail. Once voting procedure has ended, you can then propose to suspend or end debate, which ends the committee session. Congratulations, your job as a delegate is complete.